The night the storm tried to bury them alive, no one in Red Valley heard their cries, except one man who had already lost everything. What he did next would change not just their fate, but his own broken soul forever. The wind howled like a wounded animal across the empty plains, carrying ice and dust through the dead silence of winter. Rancher Elias Boone stood alone on his porch, staring into the storm as if it owed him answers. His hands were rough, his face worn by years of loss, and his heart, long since closed off to the world. He hadn't expected anything that night. Certainly not visitors. But then, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was just the wind twisting shadows. But something didn't feel right. A flicker of instinct, something he hadn't trusted in years, pushed him forward. Grabbing his lantern, he stepped into the storm, fighting against the bitter cold that cut through his coat. And there they were. Two figures collapsed in the snow, barely visible beneath the growing blanket of ice. Women. Young. Frozen. Elias dropped to his knees without thinking. Their skin was pale, lips cracked, clothes torn from days, maybe weeks, of hardship. They were Apache, he realized. Outsiders in this land, hunted and forgotten by most. "Hey! Stay with me!" he shouted, his voice lost in the wind. One of them stirred slightly, whispering something too faint to hear. That was enough. He carried them inside. The fire roared back to life as Elias worked quickly, wrapping them in blankets, warming water, doing everything he could remember from a life where saving people used to matter. Hours passed. The storm raged. But slowly, life returned to their fragile bodies. When the first woman opened her eyes, fear filled them instantly. "You're safe," Elias said quietly, keeping his distance. "No one's going to hurt you here." She didn't answer, but her gaze softened just enough. The second woman woke later, weaker, clinging to the first like she was the only thing anchoring her to this world. Days passed in silence. Elias didn't ask questions. He simply provided food, warmth, space. And in return, the women slowly began to trust him. Their names were Ayanna and Tala. Sisters. They had been running. From soldiers. From hunger. From a world that had turned its back on them. Elias listened, though he said little. But something inside him began to shift. For years he had lived like a ghost, haunted by the memory of his wife and child, taken by illness in a winter just as cruel as this one. Saving these women, it wasn't just kindness. It was redemption. But peace doesn't last long in a broken land. One evening, Tala noticed something from the window. Tracks. Not animal. Men. And they were getting closer. The tension in the cabin grew heavy as the realization settled in. They had been followed. Ayanna's voice trembled. "They won't stop. Not until they find us." Elias stood still, staring at the door. For a moment, the old fear returned, the instinct to step back, to let the world take what it wanted and protect only himself. But then he looked at them. Two lives that had already endured more pain than most. "No," he said firmly. "Not this time." That night he prepared. Not for running. For standing his ground. The storm had slowed, but the cold remained sharp. Elias set up lanterns outside, loaded his rifle, and positioned himself like a man who had nothing left to lose, but everything to protect. The sisters watched him, something unfamiliar growing in their hearts. Hope. Hours later, shadows appeared at the edge of the land. 3 men. Riders. Dangerous. They approached slowly, confident, like wolves who thought their prey had nowhere left to go. Elias stepped out into the open. "You're not welcome here," he called out. The men laughed. "Those women belong to us." Elias didn't move. Not anymore. What followed was a silence so deep it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Then, a gunshot. The night exploded into chaos. But Elias didn't back down. Every shot he fired wasn't just survival. It was a stand against everything he had once lost. Against the helplessness that had defined his past. Inside the cabin, Ayanna gripped Tala's hand tightly. Tears streamed down her face, not just from fear, but from something deeper. Someone was fighting for them. For the first time in a long time, they weren't alone. The confrontation ended as quickly as it began. The men fled. And Elias remained standing. Wounded, exhausted, but unbroken. When he walked back into the cabin, the sisters rushed to him. No words were needed. In that moment, they became more than strangers. They became family. Sometimes, the coldest nights bring the most unexpected warmth. A broken man found purpose again, and two lost souls found a place to belong. Because even in a world filled with cruelty, one act of courage can rewrite everything. If today's story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And remember, even a small act of kindness can change someone's entire life. Red Heart.